This is the Recruit the Employer podcast, and you're listening to episode 89, What Wildly Successful Women Do. Welcome to the Recruit the Employer podcast, a show for the ambitious, action-oriented career woman who wants to live out her purpose, rise to the top of her industry, and be seen as a leader at work. In 30 minutes or less, we'll walk you through the latest strategies to land your dream job, blast through imposter syndrome, and make the money you deserve. I'm your host, Jena ex-Wall Streeter turned career coach and founder of Recruit the Employer. But more importantly, I'm on a mission to help you fall in love with your work again. So grab a glass of wine, get ready to be coached, and tune in to your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Recruit the Employer podcast. I'm so excited that you are here today, tuning in this Wednesday. Today's episode is going to be really fun. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is what do successful women do? What are their habits? What do they adopt? Who are they like? I think this is a really interesting subject because oftentimes it's really helpful for us as individuals if success is something that we're interested in or if we want to be seen as best in class. How do we achieve that? It's often really helpful to see what do other quote unquote successful women do. Now, I want to be very clear when we're defining success, success can look a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. What we're going to be talking about today specifically is career success. So someone who is able to be seen as a leader in their industry, somebody who potentially makes a decent amount of money, somebody who is known for their professional success of rising to the top. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Again, success looks different for different people in different stages of life, but for today's purposes, that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, I promised you last week that I would start off every episode giving my work win. And this is in an effort to get you in the habit of weekly looking back and reflecting on what did you do really well. It's so easy for us to identify the things that we're not really good at, and we forget to notice the things that we actually did really well. And the reason why I want people to do this and to make this a weekly habit is because I believe at the end of the year, if you have done that, if you've been diligent about this one thing, it's like 15 minutes a week that you have to reflect. If you can set aside that time at the end of the year, you're going to be able to look back and see the amazing things that you've been able to accomplish and the amazing things that you've learned throughout the course of the year. So that one, the next time you sit down to do your resume, you're like, oh my gosh, I have all these things that I've done. And two, you just feel really good about yourself. I think so many of us will get to the end of our workday or the end of our year and are like, what did we do? I don't even know. This exercise is super helpful. So for me to kind of lead the way in that, my work win for this year for this week is I planned out my whole entire year. So I've actually never done this before. I've done some goal setting. They're more loose goals. I've done it with my biz friend, Elizabeth McCravey. You guys have probably heard me talk about her before. She did my website. She's amazing website templates. But I've done some planning like with a friend, but I never really actually laid out my entire year. And as I'm recording this, I'm actually looking at my calendar. So I got a yearly calendar to put up on my wall. And if you are a 9-to-5er, this is probably really helpful for you if you have this space on your wall now that you're working from home to really understand what does the year going to look like. And on that calendar, I've made project goals for myself. I've made operation goals for myself. I've made partnership goals for myself, and I made financial goals for myself. So I really bucketed into 4 main categories for my business. For you, if you're thinking about goal setting for your year and you're like, Jena, I tried to get to it at the end of the year, didn't happen. I want to do it in the new year. Some different buckets that you could plan for could be financial goals. It could be a side project goal. It could be a leadership goal. So maybe you want to enter into a new leadership space in your company. Maybe you want to learn something new. Maybe you want to attend a seminar, right? So those could be different buckets that you plan out for your own personal year. So I'm really proud of myself for that. I think it's setting myself up for a lot of success. I have a plan. I have goals. I have dates on the calendar. This is like the most planning I've probably ever done. I'm not a traditional planner. I have big goals, but I knew that this year I really wanted to take massive action since that's my word of the year. And I can't really make action on something that doesn't have a plan. So I had to create a plan for that. So that's the thing that I'm most proud of. And if you're listening to this podcast episode, I would love to hear from you. What are your work wins for this week? What are you most proud of? I would love if you would send me a message on LinkedIn. That's where I live the most. We're back on Instagram. So if you've been following me on Instagram, we have launched our new Instagram called @RecruitTheEmployer, but I'll still be posting over at Jena_Viviano as well. So I'd love to see what your work wins are. I want to share with you 2 different reviews that came up over the past couple of weeks that were just so awesome. We love getting reviews, shameless plug. We have no shame asking for reviews because 1, it helps other people understand, hey, I'm in the right place. And then 2, it also helps our podcast rise to the ranks so that other people, other women leaders, other ambitious women can find this show and then get the help that they need. So here's the first one. And this one said, and the names on Apple Podcasts are so weird, right? So Odell C is the one that this is from. It says, Jenna's podcast is highly inspirational and motivational. Jena provides practical tips along with fun, positivity, and energy. It's often how I start my Wednesday morning commute when new episodes air. Whether you're looking for real tips for your career move or just a boost of career confidence, I highly recommend this podcast. Thanks, Jena, for all the work that you do. Thank you for putting that post in and putting that review in. It makes us feel so great when we get to read those. And the other one is from Java Potty, which says Patti. It says, I will highly recommend this podcast. Jenna's message is very inspirational and definitely offers a great perspective of the work-life balance. I especially love Jenna's energy and how she radiates delivering her message. Well, thank you so much for giving us a review. We so appreciate that. And if you've been listening to this podcast and you've been enjoying yourself, leave us a review. We would be honored and we'll share it on the show. All right, let's hop into today's episode. So, we're talking about what wildly successful women do. What are their habits? Who are they? And I did a little bit of research myself. And I think it's really helpful for us first to think about what does a successful, who do you think of when you think of a successful woman? So maybe you think of there being, the notoriety that they have, positive notoriety, most likely. Hopefully you're not thinking of a successful woman who has negative notoriety, but a positive notoriety, right? So when I was in the 3rd grade, we had to do a biography project. Maybe you guys did this whenever you were in school. And I did a biography project on Florence Nightingale because I thought she was really interesting. She was a nurse who, I really can't remember a lot about her now, but she was famous for her generosity, for her compassion. And that's somebody that I think of when I think of a successful woman. So it doesn't necessarily look like monetary, but she was notable. People knew about her. She did something exceptional and extraordinary. Maybe you think of successful women, you think of being famous, right? So when I was little, I told my mom that I wanted to be Mariah Carey when I grew up. Legitimately, that is what I told her. And she kindly was like, Jena, you don't want to be famous. We're not going to encourage that, which was wise on her part. When I was a little bit older, I wanted to be Oprah. So I very much at an early age thought success meant everybody knew who you were famous, you were Mariah Carey, or you were Oprah. Now, I will still say to be a successful woman, I look to Oprah all the time. She's definitely somebody I look to as inspiration. Maybe you look at somebody as being innovative or somebody who is a thought-provoking, future-facing, right? Dolly Parton for me, you guys know I love talking about Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton, I think, was ahead of her time. Right? So I look at her and I think of her as a successful woman. Yes, from a monetary standpoint, obviously, and from she rose in her career. She really led the charge for women in country music. And she's just an amazing woman. She's just so fun to, listen to. Anyways, everyone loves Dolly. Nobody can't like Dolly. So she was innovative and ahead of her time. So when I think of a successful woman, I think of her. Or maybe you think of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She was also ahead of her time. She disrupted an entire industry and became the first female billionaire. Self-made billionaire, self-made. So, we think about these different types of women, right? From an innovative standpoint, maybe from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I know when I was younger, when I was living in New York City, I would constantly look at the Forbes 30 under 30 lists to see who were on these lists, because that to me was success, right? So these are all different ways that we can define it. So I want you to be thinking as we're going through these, how do you define success? Is it because they're, notoriety? Is it because they're famous? Is it because they're innovative? Is it because they're entrepreneurial? And it might be a combination of all these different things, right? For me, the Muse co-founders. I found them on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and I was infatuated with the Muse's site. Ended up getting to work for those women. They're amazing. They're really great at what they do, and they've built this amazing company. And so I think of success, I think of them. Another woman would be Kimberly Bryan of Black Girls Code. She is somebody who has led the charge, been very forward-facing, forward-leading, and she's been able to really disrupt an industry and provide an awesome, amazing service. Alexa Von Tobel is somebody else. She was the founder of LearnVest. She got acquired by, I believe, Wells Fargo. So these are all people, again, successful women. From a corporate standpoint, you might think of success from a corporate standpoint. Maybe you want to be the CEO. So Kathy Engelbert, she was Deloitte's first female CEO and now commissioner of the WNBA. Stacey Cunningham, she is the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Both of these people are Lehigh graduates, might I add, where I went to school. So these might be people that you aspire to. Maybe it's somebody within your own company. Maybe it's a mentor you have. Or maybe you think about success in terms of athletics. So Serena or Shawn Johnson or some Olympian, maybe you think about it from the athletic standpoint. So here's what I want you to do. I want corporate women, if you're listening to this, you're a corporate woman, to wake up and think differently about themselves. These women that we just discussed, they are impressive at what they've done, but they've worked really hard. They've really, really owned that they could be the best at what they do. And they've stopped playing small and they have broadened their brain about what is possible. So I want you to wake up and think differently. I say this every episode. I'm going to keep on saying it till more women have that mindset. I want you to adopt that entrepreneurial mindset in your career and really step up as the leader that I know you all want to be. So when I was reviewing a lot of these different women and kind of making my list of what I found successful and kind of batching them together in their different buckets, I started to realize that they all had a couple of things in common, about 6 things in common that I want to talk about today of how this could show up in your career and what you can do by learning from these women that are either famous, innovative, entrepreneurial, they're corporate leaders, they're athletic leaders. What do all of these women have in common? And this is where it got really fun. So the first thing, and if you're taking notes, this is the first thing I want you to take notes on. They are best in class. I think what we're seeing right now, and honestly, I see this in my own industry, in the career coaching space, and then just in the online business world in general, there's a lot of people that are okay with mediocrity, with just being average. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. On one hand, we don't want to overexert ourselves and just beat ourselves up if we're not the best and perfect and all those different things. But I feel like we've almost kind of went to the opposite end where we're okay with being apathetic, complacent, and not wanting to be seen as best in class. It should be our goal to be excellent at the work that we do. We have lost, I feel like, in our industry and in our world right now, this value of being excellent, of being the best, of being a category of one, of being best in class at what we do. So I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about what industry you're in and what role you're in, and what would it look like? I just want you to jot down some things. What would it look like to be best in class? Do you know of somebody that's best in class? Why don't you know somebody who's best in class? Like know of, right? And what would it look like to be seen as the best in class? What would that person do? How would that person think? What would they be accomplishing? All of that's different stuff. We should be striving for excellence, not perfection. We should be striving for excellence and being best in class. The women that I shared with you had a hunger to be best in class, to be differentiated, to be set apart, right? If you are an ambitious corporate career woman, because you live in a sea of average and mediocrity, your job is to become best in class. That's your job. That is your job, is to become best in class. So I want you to think about your own career and think about the way that you're going in your career, right? Are you heading towards a place where you can be seen as best in class? So I want you to spend some time today really thinking about what does it look like to be best in class in my industry? What would I have to accomplish? What would I be known for? Who would I be seen as? Like, what does it look like to be best in class? And I want you to get really clear with yourself on what those things are. And if you don't know the answer, I would even start asking around, right? What's it mean to be best in class in your current role that you're in? That's one that we don't like talking about because we just want to move on from the role that we're in, right? But what does it look like to be best in class, the best at your job, right? So it's a no-brainer. So best in class is the number one thing that I have seen of what wildly successful women do is they want to be seen as best in class and they put the work in to get themselves there. Hi there, friends. Jena here again. Let me guess. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not looking for any job. You're looking for the right job. And the right job is not at your current company. You're tired of feeling underpaid, overworked, and like your career is in the hands of the employer. You're ready to make some moves, but you're overwhelmed by all of the options, don't know how to sell yourself, and have a nagging feeling that your lack of confidence is keeping you from success, not to mention negotiating the amount you're worth. If this sounds like you and you're a mid to senior level career woman who makes over $100,000, we have the 5-step solution just for you. Our signature program, Recruit the Employer, is designed to help women leaders get clarity on what they want to do, market to their dream jobs, and negotiate thousands more. Using a personal branded approach, we equip you with the tools to sell yourself in a non-sleazy way, think like a C-suite leader, and ultimately take back control of your career. To apply, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call. Over the course of 6 months, you'll network with other female leaders at similar stages, learn how to double your salary, and solidify your career story. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, that dreaded resume and LinkedIn profile? Yeah, we do that for you. Because of the intimate nature of this program and limited spots, we're really very selective about who we invite into the program. To see if you'd be a good fit, again, head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to apply today. Number 2, they are strong and resilient. All of these women have faced failure. All of these women had faced multiple rejections. All of these women have not had, it wasn't an easy road to the top, right? None of these women, whether you talk to Dolly Parton or you talk to Kimberly Bryant or you talk to Serena, right? These people are consistent and they're resilient. I think we live in such a microwave environment anymore. And I'm, to be perfectly honest, have been guilty of this in my own business. I want the results fast and now, and I'm not willing to play the long game. And what I started to realize is that when we're not interested in playing the long game and we want instant gratification, because let's be real, our society has trained us to think like that anymore, right? Our society has taught us to think in microseconds, in how fast can we get this going, right? It's all about the now instead of the long-term effects. So I believe that all of these women that you heard me talk about, right? From athletics to famous to innovative, all of these women were strong and resilient. They had a mindset that kept them forward thinking so that when the rejection came, because they were doing something big, they were doing something where they wanted to be best in class, they knew that rejection was inevitable. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. That didn't mean it wasn't hard. None of those things. But if we only put ourselves in positions where we're comfortable, we are not going to be seen as that wildly successful woman. None of these women were comfortable. They pushed through comfort zones. They became strong. They became resilient. And they were okay with rejection, right? So if you're thinking about your career right now, this is another place where I want you to pause and I want you to reflect on your own career and say, okay, am I acting and playing for the long game? Or am I only thinking about the here and now? What are some ways, I want you to think about this from a very practical standpoint, what are some ways that you can start to develop your resiliency? Now that might not seem obvious, right? Like, I don't know, Jena, how do I develop resiliency? It's do something that can't be accomplished in 24 hours. Honestly, the job search is a game of resiliency. So if you are in the job search right now, congratulations, you are practicing this. If you are somebody that wants to be best in class, you have to be playing the long game. It's not going to happen overnight. There is no such thing as an overnight success. A lot of people, even in my industry, in the online business world, a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, they were an overnight success. The reality is they had years of experience, years of failures before they actually got to the point where they got to. The same thing holds true for you in your career. I need you to be strong. I need you to be resilient. And I need you to ignore what the rest of the world is telling you that everything should be easy and fast and microwavable. It should not. It should not. My husband calls it the death machine, the microwave to food. He loves food. He loves to slow cook things. He loves playing the long game and spending hours in the kitchen. Praise God, because I certainly do not. But what that tells me though, and what that helps signify for us, that analogy helps us understand that the food actually does taste better when it's been slow cooked, right? It does not taste as good when we microwave it. So we cannot expect our career to feel good if we're not playing for the long game because we have our eyes set only on the one step in front of us or the one thing in front of us or wanting to achieve that goal in the next 24 hours, right? We need to be strong and resilient. So number one is these women are best in class. Number two, these women are strong and resilient. And wildly successful women, number three, keep good company. So this is a really, really big one. And this is what I want to unpack a little bit because I also feel like, especially living in the ages of Corona, if you're listening to this, we are in 2021, just a toe in. So we have had the whole year behind us of coronavirus, and we have been distanced from people. We have been physically not in the same places. And so it becomes very hard to keep good company, to put yourself in the circles and to build relationships and friendships. The women that are the ones that I have shared, but even just in general, I know in my own life, it is so important. It is so important. This is why we incorporated this in the Recruit the Employer program. Before, I did one-on-one coaching and with Recruit the Employer curriculum, and I realized that it wasn't as effective as the group environment. The women that were in Recruit the Employer in our higher investment, higher long-term program were obsessed, obsessed with the program because they got to know not just myself and learn the system, obviously. I actually wasn't the most important piece. They would hang out outside do Zoom calls outside of us meeting together. They became friends. It became close because it matters. The company that you keep matters in your career. And I wish I could say this a zillion times over. This is things that I feel like people don't learn early in their career. And then by the time they get later in their career, it's not that it's too late. It's just harder. And so if you are in your late 20s into almost 40, this is something I want you to remind yourself of. It matters who you surround yourself with. If you're surrounding yourself with, mediocre people who are fine with being mediocre, and again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what that person wants to be. But if you are somebody who desires to be ambitious, who desires to be best in class, you are going to separate. There's going to be a natural separation there. So if you're spending all of your time with people who are just okay with going with the status quo and you want something different, I need you to really evaluate how you can incorporate some of those A players in your life. It's one of the reasons that I personally invest in coaching programs. It's the reason why I invest in coaches. It's the reason why I listen to certain podcasts, because I want those words of those top A players to be infiltrated into my brain. Right? It's the reason why I have a lot of mentors. I have women that are much older than me that can speak into my life. And I think it's important because the company that you keep matters. It really, really matters. And if you're realizing, gosh, Jena, I don't have that in my career right now. And if you are over a 100K earner and you are interested in really meeting other women that are like you, that are ambitious to find that company you keep as you're trying to change jobs, you know where to find us, recruittheemployer.com/call to schedule your call to see if this is the right place for you. So that's number 3, is keeping good company. Number 4 is being a lifelong learner. So women that are successful know that they don't know everything, and that's okay. I think we as women feel like we need to know everything, and otherwise it makes us feel like we're an imposter, right? That syndrome comes up. But the reality is, all of us are lifelong learners, and we should be proud of that, and we should be excited about that, and be okay with not knowing everything. I think the women that are able to cut through that noise and not overthink everything are the people that rise to the top, because they're willing to learn, they're willing to be coachable, they're willing to be malleable, they're investing in themselves professionally, whether it's taking leadership seminars, whether they're investing in coaching. I mean, that's a really big thing. Executive coaching is one of the top. It's a huge expense right now for corporations, but also for individuals who are at that top level, who really know the value of investing in themselves from a coaching perspective, and then also just from a programming perspective, right? So it could be, like I said, those seminars, it could be reading books. These are people, the women who are at the top are people who invest in themselves because they know that that is the best return on investment. No matter what they do, investing in themselves is always, always a good investment. So that is number 4. Number 5 is keeps her promises to herself. So this kind of goes along the same lines of being strong, resilient, and playing the long game. I have been guilty of this. I have not always kept my promise to myself, right? So I say I'm going to do something. One of the best examples I can give is I've been saying for 2 years that I was going to, write a book. So we are ending up on year 3 after that goal was made. And it has not happened yet. I did not keep my promise to myself because I had other priorities, if I was honest, that needed my attention at the time and that I valued more in the moment than writing a book. I can honestly tell you that this year will be different. I have on my calendar, I mentioned that I have my whole year planned out. I have a date on which the book should be written by, and then a date it's going to release. I'm not going to share those with you in case we have to alter them a little bit with printing and whatnot, but I am going to keep that promise to myself. For a lot of you that are listening, maybe you made a promise last year that this was going to be the year that you changed jobs and you got scared or things happened in 2020. Hello. I want you to make that promise to yourself, that goal, and I want you to keep it for 2021. I want you to keep that promise that you've made to yourself at the beginning of this year, because successful women honor themselves as much as they honor other people, right? You're honoring yourself. That is, you want to talk about self-care? That's a great form of self-care, right? Keeping a promise to yourself. And number 6, wildly successful women take massive action, which leads me to my own word of the year. I felt like last year was a year of rest, honestly. It was a year of focusing on my personal life. It was a year of recalibrating and adjusting with everything that was going on in the world. And so this year really is a year of massive action. And I believe that successful women don't just think about making action, they do the actual work. And that may sound harsh because maybe you're like, I'm doing work. But this is where I can just only tell my own story, where I have personally been guilty of, I'm doing all the things. I'm working so many hours, but I wasn't really taking action on a strategic action on the things that I was doing. I wasn't going all in on those specific projects and actually making things happen with what I was learning. So there were certain programs that I was in that I wasn't taking advantage of because I wasn't taking massive action because I was the problem. So if you're thinking to yourself, gosh, Jena, I know that like the job thing, I've been wanting to do it. I've been kind of dipping my toe in, but I haven't been networking. You need to reevaluate that. And maybe that's an area that you need to take massive action in. Or like, oh gosh, Jena, I've been saying that I was going to do LinkedIn posting because I want to build my thought leadership online, but I kind of did it a little bit, not really that much. No, I need you to take massive action this year, because that's what separates the people that are average to the people that are ambitious and rising to the top. If you are, and again, there's nothing wrong with being average and being okay with where you are. But if you're listening to this podcast, my guess is you want to build yourself. You want to grow professionally. You want to be seen at the top of your industry, best in class. You want to make a lot of money. You want to give back a lot of money. You want to support your family, and you want to set yourself up for long-term success. If that sounds like you're in the right place, and I'm going to be firm with you. You got to take some massive action. You got to keep your promises to yourself. You've got to be a lifelong learner, always learning. You got to keep good company. Surround yourself with people that are going to push you further, not hold you back. And this is a big one. This is a hard one to deal with because we feel mean by surrounding ourselves with people that are on the same wavelength, the same mental energy as us. Being strong and resilient, and you got to be best in class. Want to be best in class. These are the things that wildly successful women do. Here's your blueprint. Right? Here's your blueprint. It's your opportunity for you to evaluate, where am I kind of lacking? Where am I not thinking in the same ways? What can I do physically, practically today to take massive action to move me closer to my goals? I would love to hear what you're coming up with. If you're new to this podcast, thank you so much. Today was kind of like, hey, here's a punch in the gut. You got to get some work done, right? We're going to be back next week talking a little bit about unpacking more of the work wins and how you can actually know what you're accomplishing throughout the course of the year, and some weekly practices that I want you to be thinking about. Awesome, guys. We will see you next week on the Recruit the Employer podcast. Thanks for listening to the Recruit the Employer podcast. If you've been loving this podcast and it's been helping you approach your career in a brand new way, I have 2 shameless asks. Number 1, make sure you hit subscribe right this very second. That way you won't miss a single episode. And number 2, would you give us a review? Reviews help other ambitious career women like you know that this podcast is the place to be, and helps the podcast climb to the top of the charts. Think of it as some good career karma. And as always, if you want to learn more about the topics we discussed today, or are ready to take massive action and invest in yourself and your career, we would be honored to help you. Head on over to recruittheemployer.com/call to book your free strategy session. Regardless, we will see you next week.